press it already?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Anyways, so, hey, in this video, we're going to be learning about the quadrilaterals, and we're going to introduce you a bunch of new shapes here. We're going to talk about parallelograms, rectangles, rhombuses, and squares, and how they're related. And we'll also get into trapezoids, isosceles trapezoids, and lastly, we'll jump into kites. Alright? Now, oh, hey, Mr. K. You want to learn about quadrilaterals? Yes. Yes? Okay. Well, a quadrilateral is a shape that has four sides. Now, we've learned about one type of quadrilateral, which is a parallelogram. You ever heard about a parallelogram? Okay. Well, we learned already that there are properties of the parallelograms. Now, the properties of the parallelograms are going to be used to other polygons, such as a rhombus, okay, a rectangle, okay, and also a square. Okay. Okay. Now, a rhombus is going to have four sides that are the same. A rectangle in the corners have 90 degrees. And a square has all of the rules, really. You have 90 degrees and all four sides are the same. Now, because a square has all of the rules, let's just forget about it. Okay? Okay. So, if we forget about the square, let's add in a parallelogram. A parallelogram, all sides are parallel. Okay. Okay. So, let's talk about a rhombus first. A rhombus is going to have all four sides are the same. But also, if we talk about the diagonals of a rhombus are going to be perpendicular. They're going to have a 90 degrees right at the perpendicular. A rectangle, the diagonals are going to be congruent. Okay. All right. Also, lastly, for the parallelogram, the diagonals, but let's say if it's a rhombus only, the diagonals of a rhombus are going to bisect the angles. So the two top angles will be congruent to the bottom two angles, and the two side angles will also be congruent. Yes? Okay? Okay. Okay. Okay, Mr. K. Now let's move on to trapezoids. A trapezoid is where there's two bases that are going to be parallel. That means that they won't ever touch each other. And then there's going to be two legs that can be parallel, and they actually can't be parallel. So we have two bases and then two legs in a trapezoid. Now, if we want to get more specific, we can talk about an isosceles trapezoid. An isosceles trapezoid is when the two legs are going to be congruent. Okay. Also, if we have an isosceles trapezoid where the two legs are congruent and the two bases are parallel, then the two top angles are going to be congruent and the two bottom angles are going to be congruent. Okay. Alright, and then also, if we take that isosceles trapezoid, we know if the bottom two angles are going to be congruent and the two bases are parallel, then we must have the two legs are also congruent. So we have an isosceles trapezoid. Alright? Okay. Okay. Alright, now we're going to talk about a midsegment. Now the midsegment is inside a trapezoid. The midsegment is going to be right in between each leg going across. Now the midsegment is going to have some properties. First of all, the first property is the fact that the midsegment will be parallel to all bases. So all three will be parallel. The second thing that a midsegment is going to have, if the top was A, the bottom was B, and we call the midsegment M, then we have an equation. We can say 1/2 times A plus B will equal the midsegment. So if you have the two bases, you can always find the midsegment. Lastly, I want to talk about kites. Okay. A kite is where we have the two top sides are congruent and the bottom two sides are going to be congruent. But they don't all have to be congruent. Now there's some properties of kites. The first property of a kite is going to be the diagonals. The diagonals are always going to be perpendicular. The second thing about a kite is that the two opposite sides, no, not opposite sides, kidding. The two opposite angles that are in between the sides that are not the same are going to be congruent as well. That's all there is to do about kites. Okay, now the last thing we're going to work on is the main idea of a quadrilateral. And let's break it down into pieces. Okay? Okay. All right. So the first way we can break down a quadrilateral into a parallelogram. Now, a parallelogram can also be a rhombus. Now, a parallelogram can also be a rectangle. Now, the last two pieces, the rectangle and the rhombus, also connect down to a square. And square up to rectangle, rhombus, up to parallelogram, back to quadrilateral, all connected. Now, the other section that's going to be connected is going to be quadrilaterals to trapezoids. Trapezoids by themselves that go down into isosceles trapezoids. And the last thing that's not connected to anything at all, that has all different rules, is going to be the quadrilaterals to the kites. And that is the whole thing of quadrilaterals and how they're all connected to each other. Okay, okay. Let's go.